Yo, what's good everyone? Today's video is more Pokemon TCG content. The new Temporal Forces set just came out and is really sick. I want to show you guys one of the decks that I've been having a lot of fun playing. I'm going to show you guys the deck list in paper, and then we're going to show you guys some Pokemon TCG live gameplay. So let's just get right into things. First things first, this is the Ancient deck. You got to get the matching deck box too. You know, you got to get this like $3. You got to get it. It's like $3. You know, you gotta have the accessories. That's the whole thing with Pokemon is you got to have the accessories. Anyway, for the Pokemon, you got to play 4 of the Flutter Mane. This guy is an Ancient guy. He basically reads plus power or stop the Lost Box guy. That's pretty much it. And then you got to have 4 Koraidon. You rarely ever attack with this guy, but sometimes you do. I want to say like maybe 10-15% of games you're attacking with this guy. He does 30 for each of your ancient Pokemon in play. Keep in mind, all of these Pokemon are 1 price, so that's pretty cool. Then you got to have your main attacker, which is the 4 Roaring Moon. This guy is super sweet. Also ancient, of course. He does plus 10 for every ancient Pokemon or ancient card in your discard pile. So all the ancient cards, each one that gets knocked out, discarded, milled, whatever, he gets bonuses. You usually are attacking with him. I want to say like 85-95% of your attacks are going to be with this Pokemon. And then to round out the Pokemon, we got 2 more here. We got 1 more ancient Pokemon, the Great Tusk. The Land Collapse ability lets you close out games, lets you mill out your opponent. If they get a little too cheeky, go down to 4 cards in deck. Ooh, just get those last 4 cards out of here. And then, of course, 1 Radiant Greninja. He's the MVP of this deck. He lets you turn any energy card into Pot of Greed. So that's that boy. That's all the Pokemon. Basically, attack with Roaring Moon, attack with Koraidon sometimes, attack with the Great Tusk rarely, but only when you're going for game. And then Radiant Greninja draws you cards, and Flutter Mane buys you time. Main supporter. This is a supporter you're going to be playing most of the time. Professor Sawdust. Now, of course, the clickbait is going to say you can build this deck for like $30 or something. And you can. You actually can. That's not clickbait. But you would have to get a different version of this card because this is like the nice shiny version. As you can tell, it looks fantastic. The way it works is it just puts energy on your guys for free and draws you some cards, so really strong. And then you have the worst supporter, but you got to play it because it's an ancient card, and that's the Explorer's Guidance. Shout out to the Rare Hunter for hooking me up with the 4th one so I can make this really sweet profile for you guys. You generally speaking want to be playing 1 guidance per game, and then every turn after that you're playing Sawdust or a different supporter I'll show you later on. And then to find the Sawdust, you got to play 4 Pokegear. This card just looks at the top 7 and adds a supporter. So pretty useful at finding the Sawdust. Kind of like 12 supporters, and then 1 Pal Pad to reuse your Sawdust. Pretty important also against mill decks. 1 Superior Energy Retrieval helps you get back your energies and can discard those cheeky Explorer's Guidance, Flutter Manes, whatever. Gets you big damage in the late game, just as a double discard. 1 Super Rod, this helps you reuse your Roaring Moons. It also helps you not deck out, and sometimes you need to put back energy. It comes up quite a bit, actually. 4 of, I think, one of the best cards in the deck, which is Earthen Vessel. This card is very underrated. It lets you get all your energy out of your deck, and this comes up a lot for Pokestop and for like making sure your draws are good and your mills are good. And it also helps you guarantee that you have those energy drops for not only your attach, but also for the Radiant Greninja pitch. Really strong card. It's also an ancient card, so each one used bumps up your guy, not only 1 for the ancient, but 1 for whatever ancient card you discard, which is really nice. Then 4 ancient booster. This helps you against Charizard. I think you need to play the full 4. They just put your guy to 200, so you can play a slow game versus Charizard, which is the most popular deck right now. Really strong card. Also ancient, can also give you more pumps on the Roaring Moon. And then your Ace spec, of course, you got to play the ancient one, Awakening Drum. It's just good that it's ancient and it draws cards. Now for your gust effects, I do play 1 bosses. I know some lists are cutting it, but I think it's just too strong. You rarely use it. You oftentimes discard it and don't get to it, but there are some matchups where just having a bosses is really important. And also in some games where you pull ahead early and you can't use one of your 3 counter catchers, which are your other gust effects. Bosses is just too important at being able to snipe down like let's say like an Iron Crown or a Mew-EX or something like that, and just give you that 2 prize knockout even if you're ahead. For the ball search, I do play 4 Nest Ball. I think this card is great. It gets you to Radiant Greninja 1 for 1, so it just gets your engine going immediately. And I can find you Roaring Moon, which is important. And then I do play 2 Ultra Ball. I've seen people play as much as 4 of this card to discard the ancient Pokemon, but I don't think that that is super necessary. I think just 2 Ultra Ball is fine. The only Pokemon you really need to find is Radiant Greninja. Everything else you can kind of naturally see. 3 Pokestop. This card is really strong. It's kind of like Charge of the Light Brigade if you played Yu-Gi-Oh! Mills 3 adds a bunch of stuff off the top of your deck to your hand. It's really good after you've used your Earthen Vessels because all it does is mill Ancient Pokemon, mill Ancient Supporters, or add you crucial trainer cards. So really, really strong card. It is a little bit double-edged. You give it to your opponent, they can use it too, so got to be careful of that. And then the last card that's not an energy, I'm playing one Lost Vacuum. I know some people don't play this, but I like to play it for the mirror. It's important because sometimes you punch early with Koraidon and you deal 150, but they have the tool on. It allows you to get a 2-prize turn later in the game if you can make sure and get it on a turn where they haven't yet played their Penny. I don't play Penny. I know some people play that card. I think it's kind of bad. It just doesn't come up for me. I'm almost always discarding it or bricking on it. I think Lost Vacuum is just a better card. This also helps against stuff like Hero's Cape against Gardevoir, so you can have 2 prize turns and come back into games versus that deck because that matchup is kind of rough. So big fan of this card. I know some people have cut it. Some people don't play it, but I think it still has a lot of application. It can also get rid of really annoying stadiums as well. There are quite a few of those in the format, like the Lost City from Arctina, and also the there's one that makes your basic Pokemon's energy cost higher. And then for the energies, we've got 6 Darkness. Unfortunate that the basic Darkness don't come in Hole and Phantoms because we're playing 2 fighting, and I would love to use the Hole and Phantoms for the basic Darkness, but that's pretty much it for the deck profile. Once again, you can build this whole deck, as you can see here. Not this exact rarities, but you can get the minimum rarity for all these cards for right around $35, and I'll like cut into the video and show you guys that there. And with the deck box included, you're looking at like a $40 price tag for a tier 1 deck, which is pretty impressive. Let's go ahead and get into some gameplay, folks. Alright, so the first game I've got for you guys is this really awesome game that I'm gonna play on two times speed because I can't stand watching my opponents think for 8 million years. Just kidding. My first game is up against, I believe, Future, which is the opposite of past, which is kind of like ancient if you think about it. Ancient, future, kind of like future, ancient, past. You get it? Anyway, we got Flutter Mane in the active, which is pretty nice. Waiting for the opponent to set up. As you can see, they take a million years. They got the Mew EX. We draw Asadas. So this is back when I was playing Penny instead of Lost Vacuum. And as you can see, the Penny is just discard fodder. And this is why in the deck profile I said we got to move to the Lost Vacuum because it's just better. Anyway, we pull up the that boy. You know the boy. You know the guy. Checking our prizes real quick. Always got to check the prizes. Be disciplined with it. One thing that's nice about this deck is it's pretty simple to check the prizes. It's pretty obvious when something is missing because it's usually something crucial like Radiant Greninja or some copies of Sadas, basically. We got the Earthen Vessel, best card in the deck, using discard fodder Penny because useless card. Gonna search one of each energy just in case we need to attack with Koraidon or Roaring Moon. It's just nice. I like having the dark energies left over last and using the fighting ones first. Gonna draw 2 more cards. Missing a little bit on getting a moon, but this is where the big decision point in this game happens. Now, normally the only decks that play Mew EX are actually the future decks that I see on the ladder. In major tournaments, it might be a little bit different. There may be other decks that play Mew EX, maybe like Banat Gardevoir, which is another deck that's been pretty popular in tournaments lately. But in terms of the ladder, Mew EX usually means future. Now this would be fine to end on. This board would be fine to end on if my opponent was playing Banat Gardevoir. But even then, I think I still would like to get a Roaring Moon in play. So I'm going to go ahead and fire off this Ultra Ball a little bit preemptively. I'm going to discard one of my counter catchers and I believe the Pokegear because it's just not a guaranteed card in my hand. No, I actually end up deciding to get rid of I get rid of one of the counter catchers. Now this is actually a misplay. I should have held the counter catcher. So versus future, basically your game plan is counter catcher, KO, and Iron Crown. Counter catcher, KO, and Iron Crown. And then you have either the third counter catcher or the boss's orders, which you can find pretty easily in the late game, to take either the Mew EX or another Iron Crown. And it's pretty easy to get KOs on them. You only need 4 Ancients in your discard pile in order to KO an Iron Crown or a Mew EX. You only need 3, which is very useful. Actually, I think you only need 2. So yeah, we're going to go and grab the Roaring Moon. And the reason we grab the Roaring Moon this turn is because we want to bench it And if he knocks out the Fluttermane, we don't have to promote Radiant Greninja and then hard retreat it later, which would be a pain. So bench the guy. Don't need to attach this turn. We want to save the energy to use the conceal card so that we can get 3 draws next turn instead of just 1. So that's the game plan, I guess. It's not great, but we'll make it work. The hand isn't perfect, but we've got Sadas and we've got a Moon and we've got the Greninja, so you can't really complain if you got those 3 things going. Opponent's going to Techno Radar, grab the hands, grab the Miraidon, and just bench the hands. Try to get lucky on a Generator. Now this matchup can get scary if they like hit 4 energy off Generator turn 1, because then they can just go into the hands and then take 2 prizes as soon as turn 1, and then you have to like counter that, and it's nearly impossible unless you play Slitherwing. That being said, you can still kind of wall it out if you put up a Roaring Moon and then manage to find a tool, so you can at least buy yourself a turn that way. You could also put up a Koraidon with a tool on it. The unfortunate part about Koraidon is he's Dragon type, even though he does take fighting energy, so he doesn't hit Iron Hands for weakness. You can hit Iron Hands for weakness by playing Slitherwing, but then you have to map your whole game kind of differently by getting double fighting early, and it just like makes it a little bit complicated going for the early game Slither and then the late game Roaring Moon, or vice versa. Anyway, he pitches his Miraidon, he gets more Miraidons, he benches an Iron Crown, so we have two of our 3 2-prizers that we need in play staring us down, which is quite nice. So in order for him to KO our Fluttermane, he needs to actually play 1 more Iron Crown here, and that'll get him up to 90 damage. He's going to go ahead and use his restart ability, Nest Ball, into another Iron Crown, and then he is going to attach an energy, I believe. He's missing an energy still, but the energy he attaches is a double turbo. So he's playing double turbo to be able to attack with Mew EX, which I respect, and that definitely is cool and can come up in some matchups. But it does cost you in situations like this, where on your Miraidon, it weakens your damage. So he actually needs to find yet another Iron Crown. It doesn't really change the game too much because he already has 3 2-prizers that are weak to Dark in play. So it's not like forcing him to play anything that he wouldn't have already played. And he does have the Professor's Research plus Nest Ball to be able to find the 3rd Iron Crown and get the KO. So it doesn't end up really mattering, but it is important to note that he had to get the 3rd Iron Crown because of that double turbo. So that's something that I think is a big weakness if you are playing Future, of playing the double turbo energy, because of instances like this. It actually does come up quite a bit. Anyway, he's going to go for the double turbo, attack for 100, and knock out the Fluttermane. Interestingly enough, had he attached the double turbo to the Iron Hands and then like waited on retreating until he had not generated but researched, then he would have been able to actually take 2 prizes this turn with the double turbo on the guy, and he would have had the Ampy Very Much. So that's another scary thing about the double turbo, is it gives you faster Ampy Very Much, even though it's a little bit weaker. So I think that there is merit to the double turbo. It just can make certain draws awkward, that's all. It didn't really make his draw awkward this game, but yeah, so it's looking kind of bad for us. He's fully set up. He's got the guy who can take a bunch of prizes. He's got the guy who can pump out a bunch of energy. And we're just kind of in a tough spot, but we've got Counter Catcher and a Dream. And we actually rip Earthen Vessel, which is like one of the best cards in our deck. So pitch 2, draw 2. Or not pitch 2, pitch 1 energy, draw 2. We did find Koraidon, which is kind of nice because that will give us another target for our Sadas. Here you can tell that I'm pretty much regretting not discarding the Superior Energy Retrieval instead of the second Custom Catcher, or not Custom Catcher, Counter Catcher, because it's going to be very nice to have these Counter Catchers to try and pick off the bench. Definitely a misplay on my part, but it's good to be aware of that kind of stuff. You know, that's how you learn from playing the deck. So yeah, we go ahead and check the graveyard a bunch, just figure out what the vibes are, play the Koraidon, play the Sadas, attach, draw 3. I draw into another Sadas. I go ahead and Earthen Vessel. I discard a something. Do I Earthen Vessel? Yeah, I think I Earthen Vessel first. I discard Sadas because I want to get the Ancient count high enough, and then I search 2 more Dark Energy because I need a manual attach. I play the Pokestop. I use the Pokestop. Try to mill some more Ancient cards. We don't really get there on the Ancient cards, but we've got 5 Engrave, which is enough to deal 240 on an Iron Crown. Now, here's where I make a pretty bad misplay too. I go ahead and Nest Ball out another Roaring Moon. This isn't the misplay, but this next play I think is a misplay. This is the first game, obviously, one of the first games I played with this deck where I make a few mistakes, but it's good to record your matches because it gives you something to like reflect on. I play Pal Pad here, and this is a mistake because it means I can't KO an Iron Crown. I have to KO a Mew EX because I'm shuffling back ancient cards. And you can see I think about it, and then I still make the mistake. And I check the damage, and then I'm like, wait, I've punted this game. And now I realize it. You see me being a little bit awkward with a counter catcher, but nevertheless, we can get the KO on the Mew EX, and then next turn we can find the KO on an Iron Crown. It is a little bit awkward because taking the Iron Crowns out of play is pretty crucial, because if we can get a tool on Roaring Moon, it means that his Ampy very much cannot KO me unless he finds his own tool. And I do believe he had discarded one of his Iron Crowns already. But we do get to take 2 prizes, which is really nice. This is the nice thing about this matchup is Roaring Moon hits the important cards for weakness. We draw into a couple of the tool, which is perfect. That's going to make our guys harder to kill. And we have boss's orders. But unfortunately, next turn we do kind of have to pump up that boy. You know, we have to pump up the jam a little bit. So we'll see what happens. Opponent goes for the big Arvin. He's got his counter catcher, which is an interesting choice. He goes for counter catcher on the Koraidon, and this is his misplay. I feel like he wanted to not do this and KO the Roaring Moon, because Koraidon's actually Dragon type. He probably thought it was fighting because I attached a fighting energy to it. But yeah, he removes the Pokestop. That's pretty unfortunate for us because we probably needed it. He attaches his Heavy Baton, and he's able to snipe our Koraidon. So a little bit awkward here. We need to find some KOs. We need to find them quick. But we do have an attacker with the bosses on the Iron Crown, which can be very useful. And then he can't deal a knockout using the Ampy very much on his next turn as long as we KO an Iron Crown, and that buys us at least another turn. So we're going to go ahead and attach. Probably utilize the... I forget what I use this turn. I'm trying to think if I use the concealed cards. I don't know if I do. I bosses the Iron Crown with the energy. Obviously, it's best to get the one with the energy out of play. Now, there's consideration to not KO the one with the energy and just leave it on the Iron Crown. But there's like worries about like energy switch. It's like energy switch versus Super Rod, which you're scared of. But Super Rod only matters if he has a bunch of generators left in deck, and he's already burned like 2 of them, so I'm not super worried about it. I do end up going for the concealed cards. We do find a Sada's, which is nice. Next turn we can still get the attack off because we have Sada's plus superior energy retrieval to get our stuff back. We can attack for 220 and knock out the Iron Crown. And then next turn it's going to be a matter of, you know, surviving, I guess. Anyway, we can find another Roaring Moon and we can Sada's onto that and then try to find our third counter catcher. But the opponent for some reason here thinks that maybe we've won or that something is different, or I don't really know, but the opponent does concede here. We draw for turn and they concede. We didn't have enough damage to actually KO the Iron Hands, but we did have a fighting chance that game if the Sadas drew into the third counter catcher, or if whatever else happened. So if we found like, I can't remember, I think I did use Pal Pad. I was supposed to save the Pal Pad for the bosses. I made a lot of bad plays that game, but hopefully you guys can learn from me and my mistakes and you can not replicate them. And I have no idea why they conceded, because it was still very much a game at that point. All they had to do was find a bosses for my Greninja. It would have been pretty difficult for me to pump up my Roaring Moon all the way to 230. I think he was only dealing like 140 there at the end, so I would have had to find 9 ancient Pokemon in the discard. Not very lucky, or not lucky, not very likely. All right, moving on to the next game. This game is a little bit more better played because I was a little bit more warmed up. And so this one has less misplays, but I still think it's good to look at the misplays and like kind of evaluate them and talk about them in post. This game is actually up against a very similar deck, which is the Moon or 7 Roaring Moon deck. It's a very similar ancient deck that plays Roaring Moon EX and Dunsparce. So it's a similar matchup, but theirs has 2 prizers and ours has 1 prizers. It's very akin to a mirror match, especially by the way it plays. Now the big difference maker here is we're going to have Koraidon as an attacker, and he's not going to have that. And then we're going to have Awakening Drum as our draw power, and he's going to have Dunsparce as his draw power. We start with our Radiant Greninja in the active, which sucks. It's not very good. I'm going to discard the Pokegear, and we're going to notice here that a lot of our energies are in our hand, basically. I'm going to go for the big boy Greninja, try to draw into another Pokemon so we don't get donked. We draw Palpad, Custom Catcher, or Counter Catcher. I don't know why I keep saying Custom Catcher. There are so many catcher cards in the Pokemon, it always gets them, my brain always gets them confused, basically. But solid draw is just not this turn. We really wanted to hit a Nest Ball or a Pokemon. So pretty unfortunate miss there in the top 12 of our deck. We don't see another Pokemon. He draws a card. Let's see if he's able to find the donk. Spoiler alert, he isn't. He gets close though. He goes for the Nest Ball. If he was playing the Pure Ancient deck, he might have had better chances, but then again, the Pure Ancient deck doesn't have as many ways to accelerate, such as Dark Patch or Trekking Shoes or whatever. Anyway, he mills the Dunsparce there in an attempt to try and find ways to get to his Sawdust, basically. He does find Sawdust, but it's only a Sawdust for 1. So it's crucial to recognize your resources in this matchup as early as this. Every Sawdust for 1 that you do is quite bad because it mills you 3 cards and it only attaches 1 energy. So if this Roaring Moon gets knocked out, it's like I not only hit you with a big attack and took out 2 of your energies in play, but I also milled you 4 cards. It's like kind of getting hit both by the Great Tusk and by the Roaring Moon at the same time if a Sawdust only attaches 1. So Sawdust for 1 is usually pretty bad and usually pretty like unnecessary. Like if you're not going to KO this Radiant Greninja, there's actually no reason to go for that big play this turn unless you absolutely needed to draw into something. We find Pokegear, so we're just going to go ahead and conceal cards first. We end up finding Koraidon, which is pretty cool. So we can bench that boy, that guy, that dude. I believe this game I did remove the Penny from my deck, and I think I have either a second Palpad or something else, but I was just not on the Lost Vacuum yet. And it was after these 3 matches that I did end up adding the Lost Vacuum as the last card. I think that card is just too good. Anyway, we don't check our prizes this game because this is going to be a long one. I can already tell. The mirror matches are always really long, and so I'm like, if I prized it, I prized it. Doesn't really matter as long as Radiant Greninja isn't prized. We're able to bench a bunch of those boys. We did play our Explorer's Guidance, but we can now retreat into Koraidon, which is really nice. If he KOs the Koraidon, it turns on our Counter Catcher. We can Counter Catcher and Sawdust in the same turn and have a pretty big reversal play. Plus, we're nowhere near dealing 200 with our Roaring Moon, so we don't really want to attack this guy and waste our turn on that, basically. It's just wasted effort, if we can avoid it. If we can't avoid it, then alright. But yes, this is another matchup where the Lost Vacuum would be good. It would have been good in the last matchup because they have a lot of tools. It would be good in this matchup because they have a lot of tools and they have stadiums as well. I've noticed Lost Vacuum has a lot of equity, a lot of value in this format. The more I play it, especially. It's not very good versus Charizard, but it's good versus just about everything else. So we promote the Koraidon because that's that boy. If we're going to attack, we want to attack with that fighting energy that's in our discard. We're going to Nest Ball, grab another Moon. He's your primary attacker, so you generally want to set up multiples of those. It's really important to have a stream of Moons ready to go, ready to attack, especially as you move into the late game where you have plenty of ancient cards in your discard pile. We Sawdust, we get the double attach, so our Sawdust is a lot more valuable because it sets up 2 Pokemon instead of just the one that he set up. We're going to go ahead and draw into a bunch more Pokemon. We think for quite a bit here. We can bench another Koraidon to hit for 150. And this is where things get kind of interesting. Now, I don't play the Lost Vacuum, but if I did, we'd obviously bench the Koraidon, hit for 150, and then Lost Vacuum the tool that'd get us the knockout. However, we don't play the Lost Vacuum. So we have a couple of options here. We can Counter Catcher the Greninja to KO. We can punch the Roaring Moon and threaten him in that sense and try to KO the attacker. We can do a couple of different things. He currently can't KO us back, I don't think. So I decided to go for the punch because he has to commit a lot more resources from his deck in order to KO our Koraidon back. I think he has to get at least, let's go back there for a second. Play, check the graveyard. Here it is. Okay, so he's got 1, 2, 3 ancient cards in the discard. He's hitting for 100. He needs to put 4 more ancient cards in the discard. Now, to put that into perspective, that means he needs to play at least an Earthen Vessel and an Ultra Ball. and discarding 2 ancient Pokemon. Actually, 3. He needs to discard 3 ancient Pokemon, or 3 ancient cards. Or he needs to play a Vessel, a Sawdust, or a Vessel, Explorer's Guidance, and then in some way, shape, or form get 4 in the graveyard. Either way, it's going to take a lot of cards out of his deck. And this is where my game plan starts to shift. We're kind of moving into the half of his cards are gone, but he's only taken 1 prize moment of the game. He's only taken 1 prize. Half of his cards are gone. So based off of like the duration of what it takes for him to continue his setup, as long as I'm hunting down his high resource Pokemon, the Pokemon that have like 4 cards attached to them, and leaving his draw power in play, he may be incentivized to use his draw power, deck himself a little bit more, and then that can get us to a Great Tusk KO. He doesn't yet know about the Great Tusk, but we have the setup in our hand with the attached, the Sawdust, and the Great Tusk. And rarely does Moon play Hand Disruption. So we can basically just hold on to this win condition the entire game, force him to play kind of awkwardly, and just vibe. I go ahead and counter Catcher another one of his resource Pokemon, and we can actually take a KO here, which is nice. I think this is a better play on my part than attacking the active and like bluffing the Lost Vacuum and like making him want to penny or whatever. I think this is just taking the KO when we have it with the counter Catcher, getting value out of our Koraidon, who is an attacker that rarely gets value, making sure we have 3 backup attackers, 4 if you count the Koraidon, capable of swinging at this Roaring Moon, trying to get this Koraidon in the graveyard before we start attacking with Roaring Moon, because it's just an extra plus power for his attack. So here they do start off with the concealed cards. 2 cards deeper, that's good for us. They played the Dunsparce, or just Dunsparce. They Sawdust for 1 yet again, and it's a useless one because this Pokemon already has energy on it. So really, really good for us. That's their whole supporter, their whole turn. It milled them 3 more cards. It got them 0 energy that they didn't already have. We're just kind of winning on the resource front here. Us having more ancient Pokemon to attach to a Sawdust, us being able to pressure with our lower value Koraidon is very good. And then us having the guaranteed game win with Great Tusk for the comeback. He's going to put another Dunsparce into play. And then we're just really well postured here. This mirror match is all about your posturing and then your late game deck control. How many cards you're able to maintain in deck. He's only able to hit for 120. He wasn't able to get the full 4 ancient into the discard pile, which makes sense. I mean, he have to plays a lot of resources in order to do that. We draw into Palpad. Now, he's got 200 hit points, and we have the second Palpad here in this build over the Lost Vacuum. Immediately after this game, I'm like, I need the Lost Vacuum. So I go ahead and I don't remember what I do here. I think I drum. Yeah, I drum for 5. And we don't really draw a ton of great ways to advance the situation. But we're able to Pokegears into Sawdust. I was trying to hit Boss's orders there, but it is what it is. We can go ahead and Pokestop. Once again, I'm playing a little aggressively with my deck. Maybe too aggressively. I think that there's some potential that I should have maintained a higher deck count as well, just in case he is playing his own Great Tusk. I know most Moon decks don't play their own Great Tusk, but he absolutely could, in theory, because we have a very similar engine of like Sawdust and that sort of stuff. So he absolutely could play his own Great Tusk to deck us out, and I should be a little bit more cautious. But between the 2 Palpads and the Super Rod, I'm not too concerned about decking out. We can put at least 7 cards back into the deck. I attach the tool to the Roaring Moon. I don't have anything to Sawdust. I don't believe I support her this turn. I think I just attack. Yeah, we have just a Fighting Energy, which I don't want to get low value for Sawdust, and I don't want to mill myself for 3 and not put a Dark Energy into play. So I elect not to Sawdust that turn, and that type of patience is really important when it comes to resource management with this deck. This deck, I think, if you make tiny misplays like burning your Sawdust for like meaningless draw that gets you nowhere, you have to really keep your game plan in mind. Like, what is my game plan? I need to stream attackers. I need to make sure these Sawdust get Dark Energy for me. You have a very limited amount of Dark Energy, only 6 in this deck. So you have to make every Sawdust count. Every Sawdust has to get you at least 1 Dark Energy, usually 2. So that's kind of the goal here. You don't want to be playing Sawdust for no value. It can easily cost you games by just punting stuff away like that. I noticed it when I was first practicing this deck, and I was just like making mistakes and just being like, what is going on? And then it took me a while to like really think about it and be like, oh, okay, you only want to play Sawdust if it's getting you double dark. And you only want to play like or dark plus fighting on Koraidon or something like that. Like, you really don't need to play so aggressively with the draw power in the later game, etc., because you will find the cards you need between Pokestop and the Radiant Greninja and everything. Opponent going a little crazy with the draw here, drawing deeper for themselves. They're running a little bit low on energy. I checked their discard pile to see how much energy they have, and they're able to put some of it back, I believe, at some point with a Super Rod. So I don't really know exactly what the vibe is there. They're able to set up 2 more moons, so that's really good for them. They're going to go ahead and Ultra Ball here, which is also good for them. They attach the Dark Patch. Now, that's a card that I've thought about playing in this deck. Dark Patch, I think it has a lot of merit as maybe like a 1 or 2 of in the Ancient Baby deck. I'm just not sure where you would play it. You could play it technically over the Lost Vacuum. That's like a slot you could play it over, but I don't know. I think it's fine without it, honestly. We draw another Dark Energy, which is really good. We're able to Sawdust for a Fighting and a Dark, so we get our 2 energy Sawdust. We find Earthen Vessel, which is more pump for our Roaring Moon, which is nice. We go ahead and Vessel, discard the Flutter Mane, get our last 2 Darks out of the deck. We attach to another Moon. We are kind of just hoping he goes to 4 cards in deck at some point because I want to win with Great Tusk. But alas, he needs to make that mistake. If he doesn't make that mistake, then as it stands right now, we're actually losing the prize trade. So I'm going to go ahead and Super Rod back our Roaring Moon and our Radiant Greninja. I'm going to use his Artisan to go get our Roaring Moon, so we have another stream of attacker. We don't play any Hand Disruption, and this is a moment where a Hand Disruption card like an Iono would actually be really good. But alas, we don't play it, so we're not really able to interrupt with his perfect setup here, his perfect prize trade setup. He goes for an Explorer's Guidance, and that's exactly what we want to see at this point. Him just playing his meaningless draw. Him being super aggressive with his resources, trying to get to that 200 damage threshold for his moons. This is exactly what I needed him to do. Him dropping to 7 is so good for us. He Earthen Vessels, he attaches, he Prime Catchers, brings up a weaker moon that doesn't have 2 energy, so this is good for us. It's actually less resources that we're losing. We're able to maintain the Tool Moon with the double energy instead of the weaker moon, which is really nice. He burns another Dark Patch. He evolves into Dunsparce. He goes for a Runaway Draw. Thankfully for him, the Dunsparce shuffles back in the deck, so he stays at 6. He's not going to lose the game next turn. But look how this game has played out. He's taken 1 more prize card, and he's lost 27 cards in deck. That is so aggressive. He is not safe. 2 more cards out of this deck, and that Great Tusk wins me the game. And as of right now, he doesn't have a Dunsparce in play to be able to shuffle cards back. So he either needs to find a Super Rod off the prizes or off the top deck or something like that in order to survive to my late game Great Tusk. And this is why you play him. He's kind of your checkmate card. You force people to play a 1 prize game. You force them to burn through their resources to KO your attackers. And then when they get to that last bit where they finally think they've got you in checkmate, they finally think they've won, you slap down Great Tusk, you Sawdust onto it, you attach, and then you retreat, pump it up, and then mill them for 4. Now, I could go for the Great Tusk right now, but as it stands, if you look at the way things work, if I go retreat into Great Tusk, right, Sawdust, attach, draw 3, attach for turn to the Great Tusk, mill him for 4, he draws 1 card, he attacks the Great Tusk, but he still has 1 card left in deck, and if he found his Super Rod or his Pal Pad, then he's able to just survive. And that loses us the game. So we can't get too hasty with the Great Tusk. You really only want to go for it when it's checkmate. I can contemplate going for the Sawdust, and I decided to do it because I want to Pal Pad back some Sawdust, I believe. And I wanted to make sure that my guy was dealing 200 after I Pal Padded back 2 Sawdust in order to KO his Roaring Moon with the tool. We've got all our boys powered up, all our guys big chillin'. We go for the Vengeance Fletching, and we're able to Oko, which is really nice. We take a nice little prize card here, pass the turn back, opponent draws for turn. They have 5 cards in deck, and they did end up finding the Super Rod, so it's a really good thing we didn't go for the Great Tusk. They're going to be able to Super Rod back some cards. Now, they were probably thinking that if I played the Great Tusk, I would have gone for it last turn. So there's probably a good chance that I don't play the Great Tusk or I don't have it or something to that degree. He's probably thinking he just wins. as long as he does this. And now he hits me with the big surprise card, which is Roxanne. This is another card that we could play in our deck as well that I think is worth considering as a one of in that Lost Vacuum slot. I think it's just a really, really strong card in general in this format, especially in decks that are single prizers where you can basically guarantee it'll be live at some point. You'll see our hand here is not that great, but Pokestop Superior Energy Retrieval is about as good as it's going to get with 2 cards, because Superior Energy Retrieval can get us our attach, and Pokestop can hopefully dig us towards, like, I don't know, Pokegear or something. I don't know if I've played them all yet or not. He Dark Patches onto his Moon, pardon me, and then he goes for his 210 base power, Vengeance Fletching, going down to 2 prizes. So now we really only have 1 turn to try and piece something together. We draw Professor Sada, so now we're really close. We just need to find Great Tusk, and as long as we find Great Tusk, we win. The issue is if we Pokestop and we mill our Great Tusk, we lose, because I believe I've already used my Super Rod. That being said, Mama didn't raise no bitch. We mill 3, misses all 3, and that's fine. We go for the Sadas, attach, try to draw out of this situation, and we draw really, really well. We've got the Ancient Booster Capsule, which is going to provide a discard to the Superior Energy Retrieval with whatever we draw for turn. That can get us back our energies. Sada can attach to the Great Tusk. We can retreat the Koraidon after he knocks out the Roaring Moon, and then we can Great Tusk him. We just need him to stay at 4 cards in deck. As you can see, he's at 5. He's going to draw. That's going to put him to 4. So we're going to go ahead and not attach the Ancient Booster Capsule. This is important because you need to maintain the discard fodder for the Superior Energy Retrieval. That being said, we could Sadas and draw more cards first and then Superior Energy Retrieval, but there are some circumstances where it could be important to hold this. So it's good to practice good discipline, I suppose. Just go for the Vengeance Fletching. At this point, the tool in play is not doing us any good anyway. We may need it to discard for one reason or another. I'm not really sure. We go ahead and take our prize. And as it stands for the opponent, they have 1 attacker, but they're able to find another one, and they are able to find that last Darkness Energy. They're not going to go for Asadas quite yet, but I'm assuming they're like posturing to do that on the next turn. They attack for 230, knock out our Roaring Moon. We promote the Koraidon, and then we have the Great Tusk checkmate because we've been able to, bait them into playing, what is it? I lost my train of thought. Anyway, we leave an energy in the discard pile to make sure we can Sadas. Superior for 1, retreat, discard 2. We would have had energy in the discard because of the retreat anyway, but still good practice. Attach, Sadas, attach, draw 3, mill the opponent's last few cards out of the deck, and they concede. So, very difficult mirror match. A lot of it comes down to your early and middle game resources. Me not choosing to play that Sadas on that 1 turn where I could have just to draw 3 cards actually ended up winning me the game because the Sadas we played on the last turn was actually the last Sadas in our deck. And so we were able to win the game in a situation where we wouldn't have been because we were more conservative with our resources. This is actually a very difficult matchup because it really is all about resource management. Single prizers can easily gas themselves out because of how resource intensive it is to supply that attacker every single turn. And so whoever gets to lower cards in deck first, it's kind of a game of chicken in that sense. And it's also a game of chicken in sense of like, who wants to trigger Countercatcher first. So just depends on your hand and how you play it, but I do like the Great Tusk in the mirror. And then the third game that I want to show you guys is a game where I actually misplayed terribly. I know I'm going to show you guys a couple games where I misplayed, but it's important to look at these games because I think there's more to learn from mistakes than there are to learn from like actually perfectly played games. I think the last game was played pretty well on my part and pretty poorly by the opponent. In a couple instances, they played like Sadas for 1. They were like decking themselves out when they really didn't need to. They were burning a lot of resources they didn't need to burn just to get to a certain point in the game. But that's maybe because they realized they didn't have the Great Tusk guarantee and they had to stay ahead on prizes, whereas we didn't have to. Now you'll see our hand here is actually just the perfect hand. It's like about as good as it gets in this deck. We're going to lay 6 prizes. We got Greninja Access. We got Earthen Vessel. Now all we need is Sadas. It's so close. It's such a close hand. So, lay out the 6 prizes. Opponent lays out his starting Pokemon. We chose to go first. That's something I'm not certain about in this deck, is whether or not you should choose to go first in the dark. I usually do, but We draw another Earthen Vessel. Not great, but it means we'll at least have all of our energy out of our deck. I don't check my prizes like a noob, so that's misplay number 1. Definitely check your prizes. I Earthen Vessel, pitch energy, grab 2 more energy. You'll notice here we've prized a fighting energy and a dark energy, I believe. Earthen Vessel again. Grab the last 2 dark energy out of the deck. No, I think we have all our dark energy. I just think we prized the fighting energy. So, concealed cards, draw 2 more cards. We draw another Earthen Vessel. So I'm like, okay, that's useless. What do I do with this? I don't even know. Do I Ultra Ball for something? Like, what is the plan? How do I win? What am I even doing here? I guess I'll attach the active and try to attack next turn and KO the Mew. Hopefully he can't get anything that KOs Roaring Moon turn 1. Now, this is the danger of playing this matchup, is that they have... he's playing Penny, which is a scary card to begin with. That means we have to be careful about going for 2-hit KOs, especially on the hands. This is just a scary matchup because the Miraidon gets them so much resources for so little. And they have to commit so little just to get this. And it makes me want Slitherwing in the deck. But as you can see, even in this game, Slitherwing would not be good because we prized our second fighting energy. So we wouldn't even be able to attack with Slitherwing in order to KO the Iron Hands. So it's just kind of awkward, like all around. That being said, us not having Sawdust in the top, what is this? 15 cards of our deck, kind of unlucky. No Pokegear either, so it's like missing 1 on an 8 of in the top now 16 cards of our deck. We're going to go for, I believe, Pokestop first. No, we go for Concealed Card first. So we draw 2, 18 cards of our deck. No Sawdust, no Pokegear in the top 18 cards. I'm not counting the prize cards. Otherwise, it'd be top 24, but yes. Top 18 cards of our deck. No Sawdust, no Pokegear. Little bit unlucky. Starting to get a little frustrated at this point. We can go for the Pokegear and try to hit the Pokegear. But we don't. We miss. So top, what is this now? 21 cards of our deck. No Sawdust, no Pokegear. Just manual attach gang really out here, which is really unfortunate because that card is super crucial to us getting set up, and we just didn't see it in almost the top half of our deck. It's like, well, not top half. It's the top third of our deck. But we play 8 copies of it, and we don't have a great way to get this Vengeance Fletching up to the proper amount. That being said, here, because of my tilt, I'm like, I guess I have to get the Earthen Vessel in the graveyard. What do? I come from Yu-Gi-Oh! And I forget that you can fail to find for a moment. So what I should have done was just Earthen Vessel, discard the Ultra Ball, bench the other Moon, keep it simple. But I make a mistake here, and I discard my Moon, which I shouldn't have done. That being said, we didn't check our prizes. I prized another Moon, so we don't have a 4th one to attack with. And I also didn't check my prizes to see if Sawdust were prized, basically. Here, I'm thinking, do I go for Nest Ball? Well, there's nothing worth getting with Nest Ball because Roaring Moons are all gone. So I'd rather just not do it. I should have discarded the Nest Ball or at least used it before using the Ultra Ball. This whole turn was sequenced poorly due to my tilt and not seeing a Sawdust. So this kind of goes to show that, like, if your deck is not treating you right, it's not the end of the world. Don't tilt, because then it just makes you mess up even more and punt possibly one position into something even worse. Now we've drawn Super Rod. That's another card that is not Pokegear or Sawdust, and my opponent has set up the Oko move with the Iron Hands. They're gonna Pokegear or Pokestop, using our own Pokestop against us, and find the generator and hit off the generator. So we're gonna be dropping down, or the opponent's gonna be dropping down to 4 prizes this turn, which is terrifying. We have nothing to respond to this hands without a Sawdust. He's gonna pitch an Electric Energy. He's going to search 2 Iron Crowns. He's going to be able to play both of those and KO us through just about anything if he wants to play those. That being said, if I find Counter Catcher, I'm still okay. However, I'm tilted. And I think that's kind of the story of this game, is that I'm tilted. I did not draw the card I wanted to draw. And that's something I'll just have to get used to with more practice from this deck. On my turn, I draw. It's another Pow Pad. As you can see, we still have the double Pow Pad build. That would have been a lost vacuum, though, and that would not have helped us. Ironically, it would not have done anything. So it's just another card that's not Sawdust or Pokegear. I go for the Pokestop. I still don't find Pokegear or Sawdust. So now we've gone, what is it? There are 27 cards into our deck. No Pokegear, no Sawdust, which is just really unlucky. I don't know what to say. It's pretty unlucky. We have 2 draws off of the Radiant Greninja. We can try and hit off the Radiant Greninja, which I believe I do next. Try to draw into the Pokegear. We pitch, draw 2, and we finally find the Pokegear. So I'm like, okay, this has to hit Sawdust. We've got 26 cards left in deck. That's going to put it all the way down to 19 cards left in deck. Like, seeing 7 cards deeper here. I might even nest ball Pokemon to thin even further. I don't. And then we miss on the Pokegear too. So 19 cards left in deck. All 4 Sawdust are actually in the bottom 19 cards, which is insane. That is so unlucky. That is just really unlucky. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, that's just, sometimes you get varianced, sometimes you get owned. We can Super Rod back some energies and a Roaring Moon. We kind of have to. Now, what I could have done was Super Rod and Nest Ball and do all that first, but at this point, I'm just like kind of tilted. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, yo, what is this? We have to go get Roaring Moon. Thankfully for us, our active moon has 200 hit points. We go for the Earthen Vessel, discard the Great Tusk. He's not going to be winning us this game this time. We're going to search for double energy. And I actually attach to the Roaring Moon because I'm going to try to get that KO next turn. Anyway, pass the turn back. Opponent goes. They draw for turn. They attach the energy to the bench. Now, as long as we can KO this active Iron Hands, we can stabilize. It's not looking good, though. I'll be real with you guys. It's not looking good. He generators. He hits yet again. Very unlucky for us that he just stays hitting. That being said, he can't amp you very much next turn. He has to attack with the other move. So at this point, we draw for turn. And guess what? Still no Sawdust. I'm like, bruh. I decide to go for the Pokestop first because I feel like I need my energy. And I finally mill a Sawdust. We also mill an Awakening Drum. And now I'm just tilted. Now I'm just like, bro, what is this? This is insane. What am I even doing? What is even happening here? I decide to go for Pokegear. And we finally see another Sawdust. They weren't actually even in my prizes. They were all in the deck. They were just at the bottom the whole time. I misplay going for the Awakening Drum before the concealed cards. Definitely a mistake because I do draw into another ancient guy who I would have loved to bench before the Awakening Drum, but I'm just full tilt now. I'm just like raging deep inside my heart. I go ahead and attach Dark, attach Fighting, draw 3. Go ahead and attach the Ancient Booster. Check the graveyard. I believe I rage quit. I believe I rage quit. I don't even think I checked the damage. We Pokegear. You can see all 4 Sawdust were in the deck. We just didn't see him for the first 8 turns or whatever. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. How am I this unlucky? And you know what? We could have won this game still, but I rage tilt. And the way we could have won is actually by going for the Superior Energy Retrieval, discarding the Sawdust and the Flutter Mane, pumping up our guy to deal 230, knocking this out, and then just hoping he misses an energy. We could have won. We could have won. But I just go for my 210 and then get the fuck out of there. And that's going to be it for today's video. I really like this deck. I think it's very skill intensive. I think I need a lot more practice with it personally. But it's a sweet deck, and you can build it for very cheap. I'm a big fan of the aesthetic, the vibes, if you will. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.